Daniel Reed sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, staring at the framed photograph on the coffee table. It was an old picture of him and his father taken years ago during one of their fishing trips. His father's smile radiated warmth, but now that smile only served as a painful reminder of what Daniel had lost. He sighed deeply, running his fingers through his disheveled hair. It had been 6 months since his father passed away from a sudden heart attack, and Daniel still couldn't shake the weight of grief that pressed down on him like a leaden blanket. Every day felt heavier than the last. Work, once his passion, now seemed meaningless. As an architect, he used to pour his soul into designing structures, buildings that stood tall and strong, just like his father had always encouraged him to do. But lately, even the blueprints felt hollow. Daniel glanced at the calendar hanging on the wall. Today marked what would have been his father's birthday. He hadn't planned anything special. How could he celebrate when the person who mattered most wasn't here? Still, something inside him stirred, a quiet voice urging him to honor his father's memory somehow. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was love. Either way, he knew he couldn't spend the entire day moping around. With a reluctant groan, Daniel pushed himself off the couch and grabbed his jacket. He didn't know where he was going, but staying cooped up in this apartment wasn't helping. As he stepped outside, the crisp autumn air hit him, carrying with it the faint scent of fallen leaves. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of clarity. Perhaps today wasn't about mourning after all. Maybe it was about finding a way to move forward. As Daniel wandered aimlessly through the streets, his feet led him to an unfamiliar part of town. He found himself standing in front of a small building with a sign that read, "Hopeful Paws Animal Shelter." Curiosity tugged at him. He'd never considered adopting a pet before. His busy lifestyle left little room for such responsibilities, but there was something about the shelter that drew him in. Pushing open the door, Daniel was greeted by the sound of barking dogs and cheerful volunteers bustling about. The receptionist smiled warmly as he approached the counter. "Hi there! Are you here to adopt?" she asked. "Not exactly," Daniel replied hesitantly. "I'm just looking around." "Well, take your time," she said, handing him a clipboard with adoption forms. "Let me know if you want to meet any of our furry friends." Daniel nodded and began walking down the rows of kennels. Each dog greeted him with wagging tails and hopeful eyes, but none of them resonated with him until he reached the very last cage. There, lying quietly in the corner, was a brindle pit bull with soulful brown eyes. Unlike the other dogs, this one didn't bark or jump excitedly. Instead, he simply looked up at Daniel as if silently asking for understanding. There was a sadness in those eyes, a reflection of pain that Daniel recognized all too well. "What's his name?" Daniel asked the volunteer nearby. "That's Rocky," she replied softly. "He came to us after being abandoned by his previous owners. Poor guy hasn't had much luck finding a home because of his breed." Daniel knelt down, meeting Rocky's gaze. The dog slowly rose to his feet and pressed his nose against the bars of the kennel. Something about Rocky's calm demeanor and quiet strength reminded Daniel of his own father, resilient, loyal, and full of untapped potential. "I think I'd like to meet him," Daniel said finally. After filling out the necessary paperwork and paying the adoption fee, Daniel loaded Rocky into his car and drove back to his apartment. The ride was silent, except for the occasional glance Rocky gave him from the passenger seat. Daniel couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility wash over him. This wasn't just a dog, it was a life depending on him. When they arrived home, Daniel set up a makeshift bed for Rocky in the living room and introduced him to his new surroundings. To his surprise, Rocky adapted quickly, sniffing around curiously before settling down on the blanket. Watching the dog curl up and drift off to sleep, Daniel felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in months, he didn't feel entirely alone. Over the next few days, Daniel and Rocky formed a bond that neither of them expected. Morning walks became a routine, and evenings were spent lounging on the couch together. Rocky's presence filled the void left by Daniel's father, offering companionship and unconditional love. In return, Daniel provided stability and care, helping Rocky overcome his own trauma. But while things were improving for Daniel, he couldn't ignore the challenges ahead. Adopting a pit bull came with its own set of complications, especially in a world where people often judged a breed based on stereotypes. Little did Daniel know these challenges would soon collide with another person's fears and test the limits of love, trust, and acceptance. Laura Mitchell had always been a woman of quiet strength, but her life had been shaped by fear. The traumatic incident from her childhood, the day her younger sister Emma was attacked by their neighbor's German Shepherd, had left an indelible mark on her psyche. She remembered it vividly: the sound of Emma's screams, the sight of blood staining her favorite yellow dress, and the overwhelming helplessness she felt as she watched from the porch. Her parents had sued the neighbors, and while they won a settlement, no amount of money could erase the scars. Emma required years of therapy to manage her trauma, and Laura channeled her protective instincts into becoming a pediatric nurse. Her career became her armor, her way of ensuring that other children wouldn't suffer as her sister had. But beneath her calm exterior, Laura carried a deep-seated fear of large dogs, particularly those with reputations for aggression. When she met Daniel Reed at Maple Street Coffee Shop, she had no idea how profoundly her past would collide with his present. Their meeting was serendipitous, or so it seemed at first. Laura had literally bumped into Daniel, spilling her latte all over his architectural drawings. What started as an awkward exchange quickly turned into an easy conversation. They discovered shared interests, laughed at each other's jokes, and exchanged numbers before parting ways. As their relationship blossomed, Daniel casually mentioned having a dog. Laura assumed it was something small and manageable, a beagle or a golden retriever. She never imagined the truth until the day Daniel invited her to his apartment. "Rocky's really gentle," Daniel assured her as they approached the door. "You'll see." When Laura saw Rocky for the first time, her heart nearly stopped. The brindle pit bull's muscular frame and broad head triggered every alarm bell in her mind. Memories of Emma's attack flooded back, making her palms sweat and her breath hitch. Despite Daniel's reassurances about Rocky's temperament, Laura couldn't shake her discomfort. Rocky, sensing her unease, retreated to his bed, giving her space. It was a gesture of respect, though Laura interpreted it as wariness. Every interaction with the dog was colored by her past, and despite Daniel's patience, Laura struggled to reconcile her growing feelings for him with her fear of his dog. Daniel tried to ease Laura's anxiety by arranging dates away from his apartment. He hoped that time and distance would help her adjust to the idea of living with a pit bull. Meanwhile, Laura threw herself into researching the breed. She read countless articles, some highlighting heroic acts by pit bulls, others recounting horrifying attacks. Each positive experience she had with Rocky was overshadowed by another news report or memory of Emma's ordeal. The tension reached a boiling point when Emma visited Daniel's apartment for the first time. Upon seeing Rocky, Emma froze her face pale. "I'm not going in there," she declared, refusing to step foot inside. The incident sparked a family crisis, with Laura's parents siding with Emma and warning her about the risks of living with a dangerous breed. Only Laura's love for Daniel kept them together. His understanding of her fears and his unwavering commitment to both her and Rocky helped her push through the doubt. Yet even after their wedding, the underlying tension remained. Marriage brought new challenges. Laura noticed qualities in Rocky that contradicted her fears. He moved away when he sensed her discomfort, never jumped or barked aggressively, and was adored by neighborhood kids. But trust was hard to build, especially when she became pregnant with Sophie. Pregnancy amplified Laura's protective instincts. Sleepless nights were spent reading horror stories about dogs attacking infants. Despite Daniel's assurances about Rocky's proven gentleness with children, Laura couldn't silence the voice of caution in her head. The conflict between her maternal instincts and her desire to trust Daniel's judgment became a growing source of tension in their marriage. Emma's frequent phone calls didn't help. "It only takes one moment, one trigger for everything to change," she warned during a heated conversation. Though Laura knew her sister spoke from a place of trauma, the words lingered in her mind like a shadow. Sophie's birth marked a turning point, but not the kind Laura had hoped for. Bringing Sophie home introduced subtle yet significant changes in household dynamics. Rocky, who had always been attentive, became a constant shadow to the newborn. He positioned himself strategically close enough to watch, but far enough to avoid alarming Laura. At night, Rocky abandoned his usual spot in Daniel's home office to lie outside Sophie's nursery. His vigilance touched Daniel, who marveled at the dog's protective nature. For Laura, however, it was unsettling. She noticed how Rocky would carefully pick up Sophie's dropped pacifier and bring it to Daniel rather than approaching her directly. While Daniel saw this as evidence of Rocky's loyalty, Laura interpreted it as detachment. Tension surfaced in small ways. Laura tensed whenever Rocky entered the room where Sophie was causing the dog to freeze and looked to Daniel for guidance. Unspoken rules emerged. Rocky wasn't allowed in the nursery, couldn't be near Sophie during feedings, and had to stay in another room during diaper changes. Daniel complied to keep the peace, but he noticed Rocky's increasing confusion and sadness at being excluded. Neighbors like Margaret Thompson added fuel to the fire. Her gossip about irresponsible parents and dangerous breeds made Laura feel judged and defensive. The pressure mounted, setting the stage for the challenges ahead. The Maplewood Homeowners Association meeting on a humid Tuesday evening marked the beginning of what would become a neighborhood-wide campaign against Rocky. Margaret Thompson, clutching a thick folder of printed news articles, stood up to address the gathered residents. Her voice trembled with rehearsed concern as she spoke about the dangerous pit bull living in their family-friendly community. "Just last week, I saw that dog watching the children at the playground," Margaret announced, conveniently omitting that Rocky had been leashed and quietly sitting beside Daniel at the time. "What are we waiting for? A tragedy?" Her words sparked murmurs of agreement among the gathered neighbors, many of whom had never directly interacted with Rocky, but had formed their opinions through whispered conversations and shared fears. The petition began circulating the next day. "For the safety of our children, remove dangerous breed from Maplewood." The header was bold, and the names accumulated quickly, including those of people who had previously petted Rocky and commented on his gentle nature. The social pressure to sign was intense. Margaret and her allies suggested that anyone who refused was prioritizing a vicious animal over children's safety. Laura found the petition taped to their front door one morning. As she read through the signatures, she recognized names of neighbors who had attended Sophie's baby shower, who had brought them casseroles after the birth. The betrayal stung, but deeper than that, it validated her worst fears. If all these people saw Rocky as a threat, maybe her instincts weren't just paranoia. Daniel fought back initially, creating a counter-petition with testimonials from Rocky's veterinarian, the local dog trainer, and families whose children Rocky had played with safely for years. He compiled statistics showing that breed-specific fears were unfounded, gathered character references, and even offered to host a neighborhood meet-and-greet so people could see Rocky's true nature. But few showed up, already swayed by the wave of fear sweeping through Maplewood. The pressure began affecting their daily lives. Parents would hurriedly usher their children inside when Daniel walked Rocky past their homes. Invitations to neighborhood gatherings stopped coming. Even their regular dog walker, Amy, reluctantly resigned, citing pressure from other clients who threatened to leave if she continued working with the pit bull. The tension spilled into their home life. Laura, already struggling with her own fears, now had to contend with daily reminders that others shared her concerns. She began asking Daniel to walk Rocky only late at night or very early in the morning to avoid confrontations. The dog park visits that had once been a family activity became solo outings for Daniel and Rocky, while Laura stayed home, with Sophie torn between relief and guilt. Daniel watched helplessly as his beloved companion became increasingly isolated. Rocky, sensitive to the changing atmosphere, grew more subdued. His tail, which used to wag constantly, now only lifted when Daniel returned home or when Sophie was near. The playful bark that once greeted neighbors became a quiet watchfulness, as if the dog understood he needed to make himself as unobtrusive as possible. The situation reached a new level when the local playground committee erected a "No Pit Bulls Allowed" sign. Despite such breed-specific restrictions being legally questionable, the sign might as well have read "No Dogs Allowed," as it effectively barred their entire family from a space where Daniel had hoped to watch Sophie take her first steps. Laura found herself in an impossible position at work. Her fellow nurses shared their own dog attack stories, looking at her with a mixture of concern and judgment when she mentioned having a pit bull at home with her baby. Her sister Emma called daily, sending links to news stories about dog attacks and reminding Laura of their shared trauma. Even their family pediatrician, during Sophie's 6-month checkup, made a point of asking about the dog situation. One evening, as Daniel watched Rocky lying protectively near Sophie's playmat, maintaining the careful distance Laura had insisted upon, he felt the weight of the neighborhood's judgment crushing down on them. His dog, loyal, gentle, and loving, had become a pariah, transforming their dream of suburban family life into an exercise in social isolation. As autumn faded into winter, Rocky's behavior began to shift in subtle, yet noticeable ways. The once playful dog became intensely focused on Sophie's room, spending hours positioned outside her nursery door. His vigilance took on an almost obsessive quality, ears constantly perked, body tense, responding to every small sound from within the room. Laura first noticed the scratches on Sophie's doorframe one morning while doing laundry. They were slight but distinct, clear marks where claws had scraped against the white-painted wood. When she showed them to Daniel, he dismissed them as old damage, but Laura knew better. She began documenting every new mark, photographing them as evidence of what she saw as escalating behavior. The night disturbances started soon after. Through the baby monitor, Laura would hear soft whining and scratching sounds in the early hours. Sometimes she'd catch Rocky pacing outside Sophie's door, his nails clicking against the hardwood floors. When confronted, he wouldn't retreat to his bed as commanded, but would stay firmly planted near the nursery, his eyes fixed on the door with an intensity that made Laura increasingly uneasy. During Sophie's nap times, Rocky began abandoning his usual routines. He no longer showed interest in his favorite toys or the squirrels in the backyard. Instead, he would press himself against the nursery door, occasionally rising on his hind legs to peer through the gap beneath it. His behavior around Sophie's feeding times became particularly concerning to Laura. He would sit rigidly at attention, tracking every movement as Laura nursed his focus unwavering. Daniel noticed changes too, though he interpreted them differently. He saw how Rocky would position himself between Sophie and any visitors, including their regular delivery people. The dog had developed a new habit of checking on Sophie multiple times during the night, making rounds between her room and their bedroom. During thunderstorms, instead of seeking comfort in Daniel's office as he used to, Rocky would plant himself firmly outside Sophie's door. The tension peaked one afternoon when Laura was changing Sophie's diaper. Rocky, who had been banned from the nursery, managed to nose the door open before Laura could react. He was beside the changing table, standing on his hind legs to look at Sophie. Though he made no aggressive moves, his size and proximity to the baby sent Laura into a panic. Her scream brought Daniel running, leading to another heated argument about Rocky's behavior. Their regular veterinarian, Dr. Thompson, noticed the changes during Rocky's annual checkup. The typically sociable dog seemed distracted, constantly trying to position himself to face the direction of home. When questioned about environmental changes, Daniel had to admit the increasing household tensions. The vet suggested anxiety medication, but Daniel refused, unwilling to drug his dog for what he saw as natural protective instincts. Rocky's eating habits changed dramatically. He would only eat if his bowl was positioned where he could maintain line of sight to Sophie's room. Sometimes he'd abandon meals entirely if Sophie made a sound, rushing to press his ear against her door. His once healthy appetite became sporadic, leading to noticeable weight loss that worried Daniel, but which Laura saw as further evidence of concerning behavior. Sophie's first birthday should have been a joyous occasion, a milestone marking the beginning of her journey into childhood. Instead, it became another battleground for Laura and Daniel, their marriage strained by unresolved fears and mounting external pressures. The decision to temporarily board Rocky at Peaceful Pines Kennel for the christening had been framed as a compromise, but it felt more like betrayal to both Rocky and the fragile bonds holding their family together. The day of the christening arrived under a cloud of tension. Margaret Thompson and several other neighbors who had once spearheaded the campaign against Rocky now stood awkwardly on the front lawn, clutching apology letters and gifts for Sophie. Their expressions ranged from remorseful to uneasy, mirroring the conflicted emotions within the Reed household itself. Inside, Emma sat triumphantly in the front row of the church, shooting meaningful glances at Laura whenever Sophie fussed or reached for Wacky, the stuffed dog she carried everywhere since. Rocky's departure. The celebration was hollow, tainted by the knowledge that a crucial member of their family had been exiled to accommodate others' prejudices. Each laugh, each smile felt forced, and the absence of Rocky's protective presence loomed over everything like a shadow. At Peaceful Pines Kennel, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The vibrant, loyal dog, who had saved Sophie twice, first from an intruder and then from choking, was becoming a ghost of himself. His refusal to eat, coupled with his constant attempts to escape, alarmed even the seasoned staff. Jenny, the kennel assistant assigned to monitor Rocky, called Daniel in tears on the 6th day. "He stopped drinking water," she said, her voice trembling. "When we try to administer fluids, he retreats so far into the corner of his run that even your voice can't coax him out." Daniel listened, his heart breaking with every word. The dog who had once been his lifeline during the darkest days after his father's death was now being systematically broken by rejection from the family he had protected so faithfully. Rocky's story became a painful metaphor for their own family's disintegration, love and loyalty rewarded with isolation and heartbreak. Meanwhile, at home, Sophie's behavior mirrored the household's growing distress. She would toddle to Rocky's empty bed, calling Wacky in her baby voice, unable to comprehend why her protector had disappeared. Her sleep patterns regressed, and she began showing signs of developmental delay. Even Laura, who had supported the temporary separation, found herself startled at night, missing the comfort of knowing Rocky was on guard. As if sensing the fragility of their already strained family dynamic, fate delivered another blow. During the reception following Sophie's christening, Daniel received a call from Peaceful Pines that shattered any semblance of normalcy they had attempted to maintain. Rocky had managed to escape his run during the evening walk, injuring himself on the fence in the process. Though he hadn't gotten far, the staff found him huddled in the parking lot, his bandaged paws raw from trying to dig under the kennel walls. The incident required veterinary attention, and Daniel left the reception, immediately ignoring the disapproving looks from his in-laws. At the emergency vet clinic, he found Rocky sedated and bandaged the sight of his loyal companion, injured and traumatized in his desperate attempt to return home, breaking something deep inside him. Back at the reception, Laura struggled to focus on the celebrations. Forced smiles and polite conversations felt like a charade. When Emma cornered her in the church bathroom, gushing about how nice it was to finally feel safe around Sophie, Laura snapped. Safe? Rocky has done nothing but protect her, while everyone else just judged and assumed the worst. The aftermath of the christening brought unexpected challenges. Emma launched a passionate campaign of her own, bombarding Laura with daily phone calls, recounting her trauma, and insisting that one good deed didn't erase the inherent dangers of the breed. Her words reopened wounds in Laura's heart that had barely begun to heal. The family rift widened further as their parents sided with Emma refusing to attend Sophie's upcoming birthday party if Rocky would be present. At home, the situation grew increasingly complex. While Laura had accepted Rocky's protective nature intellectually, she still flinched occasionally when he moved too quickly near Sophie. These involuntary reactions created new tension. Daniel noticed every subtle recoil, interpreting them as signs that Laura's trust remained superficial. Arguments that had nothing to do with Rocky somehow always circled back to him. You still don't trust him completely, Daniel accused during disagreements about household decisions. And you're still choosing him over my family. Laura countered, the words becoming weapons, hurled in moments of frustration. Their once peaceful home became a minefield of unspoken tensions and careful negotiations. Every decision, from where Rocky would sleep to whether they could host dinner parties, required exhausting discussions about safety, comfort levels, and family dynamics. The neighborhood support proved fickle. While some residents genuinely embraced Rocky's return, others maintained a cautious distance. Parents still occasionally pulled their children away when Rocky and Daniel passed on their walks. The playground sign remained up despite the petition to remove it caught in bureaucratic limbo with the Homeowners Association. Local media coverage added another layer of complexity, with some outlets portraying Rocky as a hero and others sensationalizing the initial concerns. This attention brought anonymous threats from self-proclaimed animal rights activists on both sides of the debate. The pressure began affecting Rocky as well. Despite his proven loyalty, he became increasingly sensitive to the household tension. His protective instincts, heightened by recent events, sometimes manifested in ways that made even Daniel uncomfortable. Delivery people approaching the house triggered Laura's anxiety all over again. Daniel's work suffered as he struggled to balance everyone's needs. He started working from home more often, trying to mediate between his wife's lingering fears and his dog's protective impulses. His architectural firm's partners noticed his distraction, leading to missed deadlines and intense meetings about his performance. Meanwhile, local veterinarian Dr. Thompson suggested animal behavior therapy for Rocky, not because of any aggression, but to help him adjust to the family's emotional dynamics. This recommendation sparked another round of debate between Laura and Daniel, highlighting how deeply entrenched their divisions had become. The storm that hit Maplewood was unlike anything the town had seen in decades. Meteorologists had warned of severe weather, but no one could have predicted the ferocity with which it descended upon the suburban community. For the Reed family, already fractured by fear and prejudice, the storm became a crucible, a test of their resilience, trust, and ability to confront the mistakes they had made. As the first power flickers occurred around 8 p.m., Daniel and Laura found themselves grappling with two crises simultaneously: Sophie's deteriorating health and the growing sense of isolation as the storm cut them off from help. The backup batteries on Sophie's medical equipment provided a temporary lifeline, but their beeping warnings echoed ominously through the darkened house. Each flash of lightning illuminated Sophie's pale face, her fever climbing steadily, despite their best efforts to keep her cool. Daniel fumbled with flashlights and emergency lanterns, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Laura alternated between checking Sophie's temperature and monitoring her breathing, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The absence of Rocky, their vigilant protector, felt like a gaping void in their home. Without him, every creak of the house, every groan of the wind seemed amplified, filling the silence with dread. Sophie stirred restlessly in her fevered sleep, whimpering Wacky, the name she had given her stuffed dog since Rocky's departure. Her cries tore at Laura's heart, a painful reminder of the guardian they had banished. She pressed a cool cloth to Sophie's forehead, fighting back tears as memories of Rocky's unwavering presence flooded her mind. How many times had he alerted them to subtle changes in Sophie's condition? How often had his protective instincts guided them when they were blind to danger? The storm intensified, turning their peaceful suburban street into a treacherous obstacle course of fallen branches and flooding. The wind howled through the trees, shaking the house with such force that it seemed intent on tearing it apart. Laura and Daniel exchanged worried glances, both silently acknowledging that they were running out of options. Their cell phones were useless without signal, and the landline produced only dead air. They were trapped, cut off from the outside world with their increasingly ill child. At 9:47 p.m., the power went out completely. The backup batteries for Sophie's monitoring equipment immediately kicked in, but their harsh electronic beeping added to the chaos of the storm. Laura checked Sophie's temperature again, 103.8 and rising. Her small chest heaved with each labored breath, and her lips took on a frightening bluish tinge. The pediatrician's words from their earlier phone consultation echoed in Laura's mind. If her fever goes above 104 or breathing becomes more difficult, take her to the emergency room immediately. Daniel made a desperate attempt to start their car, hoping to brave the storm and reach the hospital. But the floodwaters had risen past the bottom of their car doors, rendering the vehicle useless. The headlights revealed their suburban street transformed into a raging river, carrying debris and branches strong enough to sweep away anything in their path. Returning to the house drenched and defeated, Daniel sank onto the couch beside Laura, his face etched with despair. "We can't stay here," Laura said, her voice trembling. "She needs help now." "I know," Daniel replied, his tone heavy with frustration. "But we're stuck. The storm's too dangerous, and the roads are impassable." A particularly violent gust of wind sent something crashing against the side of the house, startling Sophie awake. Her crying turned into a coughing fit that left her gasping for air. Laura positioned her daughter to help her breathe, but panic clawed at the edges of her composure. In the beam of the flashlight, she could see Sophie's chest retracting with each breath, a serious sign of respiratory distress. Daniel paced the room, his mind racing for solutions. He grabbed a waterproof bag and began packing Sophie's essential medical supplies, determined to carry her to help if necessary. Laura knew the risks of moving a critically ill child through floodwaters in a storm, but staying put seemed equally perilous. The decision was made for them when Sophie's monitoring equipment gave one final warning beep before going dark. Without the ability to track her oxygen levels, they were flying blind with a child whose condition was worsening by the minute. At Peaceful Pines Kennel, the storm's intensity triggered a facility-wide power failure. The darkness and chaos awakened something dormant within Rocky. The pit bull, who had been listless for days, suddenly surged with purpose. His ears perked forward, his body tensed, and he began pacing his kennel with an urgency that startled Jenny, the night staff member on duty. "Rocky, what's wrong?" Jenny asked, approaching his kennel cautiously. Instead of responding to her voice, Rocky began barking with an intensity that seemed to communicate desperate urgency rather than aggression. His behavior was clear. He needed to be somewhere, and he needed to be there now. During a routine check of the kennels, the wind tore off part of the facility's roof, creating confusion among the animals and staff. In the ensuing chaos, Rocky saw his opportunity. With strength born of desperation, he managed to push past Jenny as she struggled to secure the kennels, bolting into the storm before anyone could stop him. The 3 miles between Peaceful Pines and the Reed household became Rocky's battlefield. Battling through flooding streets and wind-whipped debris, his powerful legs churned through water that would have stopped a smaller animal. His recent weight loss and injuries seemed forgotten as instinct and determination drove him forward. Rocky navigated the suburban maze by memory and scent, despite the rain threatening to wash away all familiar odors. When fallen trees blocked his direct route, he found alternatives scrambling through yards and over fences. His bandaged paws began to bleed again, leaving faint red traces in the floodwaters, but he pressed on without hesitation. Coming around the corner to the Reed Street, Rocky picked up a scent that sent him into high alert: Sophie's distress. The same instincts that had warned him about the intruder in Sophie's choking incident were now screaming that his family was in danger. He followed the scent, fighting against winds that nearly knocked him off his feet. Through the sheets of rain, Rocky spotted his family huddled under a distant porch. He could smell Sophie's illness and sense her struggling breaths, even from a distance. Without hesitation, he plunged into the deepest part of the floodwaters, swimming where walking was impossible. His powerful chest cut through the current that threatened to sweep him away. Laura spotted him first, a dark shape moving purposefully through the floodwaters. For a moment, she thought her exhausted mind was playing tricks on her, but then Daniel saw him too. Rocky's distinctive brindle coat was barely visible in the darkness, but his determined movement was unmistakable. When Rocky reached them, he didn't stop for greetings or rest. Instead, he circled them once, sniffing Sophie intently, then positioned himself in front of Daniel, barking with the same urgency he had shown during previous emergencies. His behavior was clear. He wanted them to follow him. Recognizing Rocky's purposeful behavior, Laura and Daniel made the decision to trust their guardian once again. Rocky seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, moving slowly, enough for them to follow, while continuously checking back to ensure they were keeping up. Instead of heading toward the fire station as they had planned, Rocky led them along a different route. His path seemed arbitrary at first, but they soon realized he was choosing streets with less flooding, avoiding the deepest water and strongest currents. He would stop at intersections, waiting for lightning flashes to illuminate the way before leading them forward. When debris blocked their path, Rocky would find ways around it, sometimes backtracking to find safer routes. His focus never wavered. He would check Sophie's condition frequently, whining softly when her breathing became more labored, as if understanding the urgency of their journey. Through the rain and wind, distant lights began to appear, the hospital's emergency generator-powered signs glowing like a beacon. Rocky had led them not to the closer fire station, but to the one place that could provide Sophie with the immediate care she desperately needed. The route he'd chosen while longer in distance had been safer and more navigable than their original plan. As they approached the emergency room entrance, Rocky's demeanor changed. The desperate urgency that had driven him through the storm transformed into gentle attentiveness. He positioned himself beneath Sophie as if ready to catch her should Daniel's strength finally give out. His eyes never left her face, his ears constantly adjusting to monitor her increasingly labored breathing. As Sophie stabilized under the care of the medical team, Laura and Daniel found themselves sitting in a sterile hospital conference room, listening to Dr. Sarah Chen explain the intricacies of their daughter's condition. The pediatrician's calm demeanor masked the gravity of her findings, but every word resonated deeply with the Reeds. Sophie has developed a rare form of pneumonia. Dr. Chen began pointing to the timeline on Sophie's medical chart. What's remarkable is that Rocky detected this weeks before conventional tests would have caught it. Laura leaned forward, her hands trembling slightly. You're saying he knew? All those times we thought he was being obsessive. Dr. Chen nodded. Exactly. Look at these early symptoms. Subtle changes in breathing patterns, intermittent fever spikes, lethargy. They align perfectly with Rocky's increased vigilance. He wasn't just reacting, he was responding to signs we missed. Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. Every scratch on Sophie's doorframe, every restless night when Rocky paced outside her room, every bark that had seemed excessive now took on new meaning. Their loyal dog hadn't been a threat or a nuisance. He'd been trying to save their daughter. The veterinary team treating Rocky added another layer to the revelation. They discovered that his hearing was exceptionally acute, even for a dog. This heightened sense likely allowed him to detect minute changes in Sophie's breathing patterns, changes imperceptible to human ears. He essentially became your daughter's round-the-clock medical monitor, Dr. Thompson, the family pediatrician admitted later. Without his warnings, we might not have caught this until it was too late. For Laura, this realization cut deep. Her professional training as a nurse had taught her to trust science and observation, yet Rocky's instincts had proven far more reliable. The dog they had doubted, feared, and ultimately banished had been their daughter's most vigilant healthcare provider all along. News of Rocky's heroic rescue and his extraordinary medical instincts spread through Maplewood like wildfire. What had once been a story of fear and division transformed into one of redemption and unity. Margaret Thompson, who had spearheaded the original campaign against Rocky, became his most vocal advocate. She went door to door, not with petitions demanding his removal, but with apologies and calls for change. "We were wrong," Margaret confessed to anyone who would listen. "That dog isn't dangerous. He's our neighborhood guardian." The local park committee held an emergency session to remove the "No Pit Bulls Allowed" sign. In its place, they erected a new plaque, "All well-behaved dogs welcome." It symbolized a larger shift within the community, a move away from fear-based discrimination toward understanding and acceptance. Other pit bull owners in the area who had previously kept their dogs hidden began walking them openly in the neighborhood. Children who had once been hurried away from Rocky now asked their parents if they could pet him. The transformation extended beyond Rocky. It challenged long-held prejudices about breed stereotypes. Local veterinarians and animal shelters reported an unexpected surge in interest in adopting pit bulls. Several families who had signed the original petition against Rocky ended up adopting pit bulls themselves. The Neighborhood Watch program incorporated a new element, a dog walking patrol where owners of all breeds work together to keep the community safe. Even the children's playground, once a focal point of controversy, became a symbol of progress. Parents organized a fundraiser to build a small dog park adjacent to it, allowing children to interact safely with dogs of all breeds under proper supervision. The project became a community effort, with residents volunteering time and resources. The local elementary school invited dog trainers and behaviorists to give presentations about understanding canine behavior. Using Rocky's story as an example, children learned about responsible pet ownership and how to properly interact with dogs. The inaugural Rocky Heroes Dog Show celebrated dogs of all breeds who demonstrated exceptional service or loyalty to their families, further spreading the message of breed acceptance. This transformation wasn't just about dogs. It was about the community learning to examine its prejudices and face uncomfortable truths. People began recognizing how easily fear and misinformation could divide a neighborhood, and how powerful redemption and understanding could be in bringing it back together. The healing process for the Reed family began earnestly during Sophie's recovery at the hospital. Emma, who had once refused to enter their home because of Rocky, now spent hours sitting beside the dog's recovery bed reading to him from her childhood books, the same ones that had comforted her after her own traumatic experience years ago. Laura's parents, once Rocky's strongest opponents, transformed into his fiercest defenders. Her father, a retired judge, began researching breed-specific legislation, looking for ways to challenge discriminatory laws. Her mother, who had once warned friends about her grandchild living with a dangerous breed, now proudly showed photos of Rocky and Sophie to anyone who would listen. Most profoundly, Laura herself underwent a transformation. The fear that had colored her every interaction with Rocky dissolved into deep gratitude and love. She spent her free moments between Sophie's treatments sitting with Rocky, whispering apologies and promises into his fur. Rocky responded with unconditional love, holding no grudge for the past months of doubt and rejection. Daniel witnessed his family's transformation with quiet joy. The tension that had strained his marriage melted away as he and Laura united in their care for both Sophie and Rocky. They began planning changes to their home, not to separate Rocky from Sophie, but to give him better access to watch over her. Baby gates that had once kept him out were replaced by special observation spots where he could maintain his protective vigil comfortably. Sophie's recovery brought another layer of healing. As she regained strength, her first words were calls for Wacky. The sight of their daughter reaching for the dog who had saved her life twice moved both parents to tears. Rocky, still weak from his ordeal, wagged his tail and gently licked her hand. Their bond was stronger than ever. The announcement of Laura's pregnancy, which had initially brought tension and worry, now became a source of joy. The family looked forward to Rocky having another little one to protect. Emma even offered to help train the dog to be as attentive to the new baby as he was to Sophie, marking a complete reversal from her previous stance. Family dinners, once fraught with unspoken tension, became warm gatherings where Rocky was an honored guest. He had his own special place next to Sophie's high chair, where she occasionally sneaked him bits of food when she thought no one was looking. Laura's parents, who had previously refused to eat in the same room as the dog, now brought him special treats. 1 year after the storm, the Reed family gathered in their backyard for Sophie's 3rd birthday party. The scene was markedly different from the tension-filled gatherings of the past. Rocky lay contentedly near Sophie's play area wearing a party hat that she had insisted on. Baby Michael slept peacefully, in his bassinet under the dog's watchful eye. The transformation of their home was evident in every detail. Rocky's observation posts, strategically placed throughout the house, had become conversation pieces. Visitors often commented on the ingenious way the family had integrated their guardian's protective instincts into their home design. The nursery door, once scratched with desperate warnings, now bore a beautiful hand-painted mural of Rocky standing guard over sleeping children. Laura's work at the hospital had taken on a new dimension. She helped establish a therapy dog program focusing particularly on breeds traditionally labeled as dangerous. Her presentations about Rocky's ability to detect Sophie's illness garnered attention from medical professionals interested in studying animals' capacity for early disease detection. Daniel's architectural firm evolved partly inspired by their experience. He began specializing in pet-friendly home designs, creating spaces that allowed for the natural integration of animals into family life. His designs often featured what he called Rocky's Corner, specially designed observation posts that allowed guard dogs to maintain their protective watch comfortably. The neighborhood had undergone its own transformation. The park that had once banned pit bulls now hosted weekly dog training sessions, with Rocky and Sophie often demonstrating the remarkable bond between child and dog. The "No Pit Bulls Allowed" sign had been replaced by a bronze plaque telling Rocky's story, serving as a permanent reminder against breed discrimination. Emma's wedding became a turning point in public perception. Photos of Rocky in his bow tie walking proudly down the aisle with Sophie went viral on social media. The images of a pit bull being so gentle with a small child in formal wear challenged stereotypes far beyond their community. Sophie herself had blossomed. Her early health struggles showed no lasting effects thanks to Rocky's early warnings and swift action during the storm. She developed an extraordinary ability to understand and communicate with dogs, often helping nervous children overcome their fear of larger breeds by sharing her story with Rocky. The Reed family's experience sparked a movement larger than themselves. Laura and Daniel, along with Emma and several community members, founded the Rocky's Second Chance Foundation, dedicated to challenging breed discrimination and promoting responsible pet ownership. Their first project was a partnership with local shelters to help pit bulls and other stigmatized breeds find loving homes. Their home became a sanctuary of sorts, hosting weekly gatherings where families could meet and interact with well-trained pit bulls in a safe, controlled environment. Rocky, despite his advancing age, remained the star attraction, demonstrating remarkable patience with children who were initially fearful. His gentle interactions with Sophie and baby Michael served as living proof of the breed's capacity for love and protection. Emma's transformation was perhaps the most remarkable. From someone who once couldn't be in the same room as a dog, she became a certified animal behavioral therapist, specializing in helping people overcome dog-related trauma. Her personal journey from fear to understanding resonated deeply with her clients, and she often used Rocky's story as a beacon of hope for others struggling with similar fears. The local veterinary clinic established a special fund in Rocky's name, providing emergency medical care for pit bulls and other breeds often overlooked due to stereotypes. Dr. Thompson, who had treated Rocky after the storm, became an outspoken advocate for breed equality in veterinary care, ensuring that no dog would be denied treatment based on breed prejudice. Laura's parents took their support to the political level. Her father used his connections in the legal community to challenge breed-specific legislation, while her mother organized community education programs about responsible pet ownership. Their grandchildren's safety, once their primary concern about Rocky, became their strongest argument for judging dogs as individuals rather than by breed. Peaceful Pines Kennel, where Rocky had been temporarily housed, underwent a complete transformation inspired by his story. They redesigned their facility to be more family-friendly, creating spaces where dogs could maintain visual contact with their surroundings. Understanding now that what they had once seen as anxiety might actually be protective instinct, they ensured that future residents would have opportunities to express their natural behaviors without judgment. On quiet evenings when the children were asleep and Rocky maintained his faithful vigil in the hallway between their rooms, Laura and Daniel often reflected on how close they had come to losing everything that now meant so much. Their story had become more than just a tale of a dog saving a child. It had evolved into a powerful message about love, prejudice, and the capacity for change. Rocky's presence in their lives had taught them profound lessons about judgment and perception. What they had once seen as threatening behavior had been the purest form of protection. What they had interpreted as aggression had been desperate attempts to communicate love and concern. The very traits that had frightened them, his strength, intensity, and unwavering focus, had been the qualities that saved their daughter's life. Their experience rippled outward, touching lives far beyond their immediate family. Other families who had faced similar fears and prejudices found hope in their story. The community that had once been divided by fear had become united in understanding. Children who might have grown up learning to fear certain breeds were instead learning to judge each animal as an individual. The message that emerged from their journey was simple yet powerful. Love and loyalty know no breed. Rocky had demonstrated that the capacity for devotion, intelligence, and protective care wasn't limited by genetics or appearance. His actions had proven that sometimes the things we fear most are exactly what we need most in our lives. Daniel often spoke about the parallel between Rocky's story and larger societal prejudices. "We almost lost everything because we let fear and misconceptions guide our decisions," he would say at community events. "How many other judgments do we make based on appearance or reputation rather than individual character?" Laura's perspective, as both a medical professional and a mother, added another layer to their message. She spoke about the danger of letting fear override observation, how their preconceptions had nearly blinded them to Rocky's desperate attempts to warn them about Sophie's illness. Her talks at medical conferences emphasized the importance of being open to unexpected sources of insight and wisdom. As Sophie grew older, she began to understand the deeper significance of her story with Rocky. She told people with the simple wisdom of a child, "Rocky didn't save me because he's a pit bull. He saved me because he's Rocky, and he loves me." Her words captured the essence of what their family had learned, that true character transcends categories and labels. The legacy they hoped to leave was one of transformation, proof that fear could be overcome by understanding, that prejudice could be dissolved by experience, and that love could bridge even the widest divides. Rocky's story became a testament to the extraordinary bonds possible between humans and animals, and the healing power of giving second chances. In the end, their message to the world was both a celebration and a warning. Celebrate the capacity for love and loyalty in unexpected places, but beware the cost of letting fear and prejudice guide our choices. Rocky had given them not just a second chance at family happiness, but a second chance to see the world through clearer, more compassionate eyes. The transformation that began with Rocky's heroic rescue and the revelation of his extraordinary instincts didn't stop at the Reed household. It spread outward, touching lives far beyond their immediate family and community. What had started as a personal journey of redemption became a movement, a testament to the power of second chances, understanding, and unconditional love. Local media coverage of Rocky's story grew into a national conversation. News outlets picked up the tale not just for its dramatic elements, but for the deeper lessons it carried about prejudice perception and the unique bonds between humans and animals. Veterinary schools and medical institutions began studying Rocky's ability to detect Sophie's illness weeks before conventional tests could identify it. His acute hearing and heightened sensitivity to subtle physiological changes sparked interest in how animals might assist in early disease detection. Laura and Daniel found themselves thrust into the spotlight, not as reluctant participants, but as advocates eager to share their story. They spoke at conferences, appeared on talk shows, and collaborated with researchers exploring the untapped potential of human-animal partnerships in healthcare. Their message was simple, yet profound. Sometimes the things we fear most are exactly what we need most in our lives. Emma's evolution from someone who couldn't bear to be near a dog to a certified animal behavioral therapist marked one of the most remarkable transformations within the Reed family. Her work became deeply intertwined with Rocky's legacy. She specialized in helping individuals overcome trauma-related fears of dogs, using her own journey as a beacon of hope. "I spent years letting my past define me," Emma shared during a TEDx talk that went viral. "But when I saw how Rocky responded to Sophie, not with aggression or danger, but with pure instinctive love, I realized I'd been wrong. Not all dogs are like the one that attacked me. And even those that are capable of harm can still show incredible compassion." Her practice grew rapidly, attracting clients from across the country. Many were parents struggling to reconcile their fears with their children's desire for pets, while others were adults seeking to heal old wounds. Emma developed innovative therapy techniques, incorporating trained therapy dogs into sessions to help patients confront and reframe their fears. Rocky often accompanied her to these sessions, serving as both a calming presence and a living example of the breed's capacity for gentleness. Through her work, Emma discovered something unexpected. Many people harbored fears not just of dogs, but of vulnerability itself. By confronting their anxieties about pit bulls, they often uncovered deeper insecurities about trust, control, and loss. Rocky's story became a metaphor for overcoming those fears, a reminder that love and loyalty transcend appearances. Inspired by Rocky's impact, Laura and Daniel co-founded the Rocky's Second Chance Foundation, alongside Emma and several Maplewood residents. The foundation aimed to challenge breed discrimination, promote responsible pet ownership, and provide resources for families adopting stigmatized breeds. Its mission statement reflected the Reed's belief in redemption. Every dog deserves a second chance, and every person deserves to experience the unconditional love only a loyal companion can offer. The Foundation's first initiative was a partnership with local shelters to create foster programs, specifically for pit bulls and other misunderstood breeds. These programs paired prospective adopters with experienced trainers and counselors, ensuring successful transitions into new homes. Families who had once feared pit bulls now eagerly welcomed them, inspired by Rocky's story and the testimonials of adopters whose lives had been transformed. One such success story came from the Thompsons, yes, Margaret and her husband, who adopted a senior pit bull named Max after volunteering at a foundation event. Max, abandoned due to his age and arthritis, quickly became a beloved member of their household. Margaret often joked that having Max around made her feel safer than any alarm system ever could. The foundation also launched educational campaigns in schools, teaching children about responsible pet ownership and challenging stereotypes through interactive workshops. Sophie and Rocky became regular visitors, demonstrating the bond between child and dog. Children who initially shied away from Rocky left the sessions asking their parents if they could get a dog just like him. Daniel's architectural firm underwent its own transformation, driven by his experiences with Rocky. He began designing homes with integrated spaces for pets, emphasizing functionality and safety without compromising aesthetics. His signature feature, the Rocky's Corner, became a staple in family-friendly home designs, offering designated observation posts where guard dogs could maintain their protective watch comfortably. These innovations caught the attention of urban planners and developers, leading to collaborations on pet-friendly housing projects. Entire neighborhoods were designed with communal dog parks, walking trails, and secure play areas, fostering environments where pets and people could thrive together. One project in particular, a low-income housing development featuring built-in pet amenities, earned Daniel an award for social innovation. Homes should reflect the needs of everyone who lives there, Daniel explained during the awards ceremony. For us, that includes our four-legged family members. Rocky taught me that design isn't just about walls and windows. It's about creating spaces where love and loyalty can flourish. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. More stories are coming soon. Stay tuned and stay curious. We love sharing these stories with you. So if it moved, you share it with someone else who needs it too.